So we're going to start by setting up the props for the first position, and we'll make a sort of um, reclining armchair where one end is a little bit higher, so maybe you can place a block at one end of a bolster or tightly rolled up um, blanket. If you have a blanket, just make sure that you support it all underneath so that there's no big hole right in the middle, but it's more or less inclined plane. And then you might have some cushions at hand as well, potentially blanket to have or a small cushion to have on top of that structure to support your head. And then you're going to sit just behind it. And you have actually a few options here of what really would like to do with your legs. So you could try a version where you have your legs crossed, and then if you cross your legs, and then there's like a gaps between the knees and your feet, you could fill them up with a blanket or with cushions, or support each of the thighs with a cushion. So that's one option. Another option is to have your feet together and knees apart, and then again you want to have your thighs supported from underneath. And if none of that, neither of this would work for you, you could also try a version when you have your knees bent and feet on the mat or the legs long. So just choose whatever you want to play with today. One of these, and then in terms of the upper body, you really want to have your entire spine supported and your head supported. That might mean that the head has to be a little bit higher. And then depending on your body proportion, sometimes it's not, you're not really reaching very comfortably with your forearms to the ground. And if the arms are shorter, then you can use also some support underneath your forearms as well. But basically, you're looking for something that is going to very gently open the front of your body, potentially including your groin and inner thighs or not. And just make sure that this is going to be the position that is going to feel fully supportive from underneath, so that you don't have a sensation that you need to hold yourself there, but that you can really give all your weight into whatever is underneath you. And also that it's fully comfortable. So there is no pulling, no stretching, no, nothing is like pinching you. So just check how you could creatively use your props so that it can truly be a comfortable position. And then you have the support for your legs, for your pelvis, for your entire back, the head, and your arms. Once you found the position that feels comfortable, you can choose whether you prefer to have your eyes open or have them closed. It doesn't really matter so long as it gives you a sense of comfort and safety. And settle into this position knowing that even though the restorative yoga is about the stillness, it does not mean that you cannot make some adjustments, some micro movements, especially if that is to keep finding the most comfortable position for you. Stay present and keep observing all those little shifts that happen from moment to moment. You might notice that the very moment you come into the position, the first couple of breaths, it's still not that comfortable, but after a while, when you start yielding into whatever props are underneath you and softening the body, it might become more comfortable. So check what could yield a little bit more and what could soften. It might be your face, the space between your eyebrows. It could be your jaws or your throat, maybe your belly or the pelvic floor. You can start observing how the breath flows through you in a completely natural way. So you're not trying to direct the breath anywhere. You're not trying to slow it down. Let it flow however it wants to flow. And you might notice that it reaches some particular part of your torso a little bit easier than in other positions. So to some extent, the position of your body determines how your breath and where your breath flows. Keep listening to little cues that the body gives you. It might be that what was initially comfortable starts bothering you for whatever reason. And sometimes all you need to do is to give yourself a little bit more support or shift your body literally just 1 or 2 centimeters. If you chose the version where you have your legs crossed and you want to try to swap the legs, which is not necessarily, it's not really necessary. I mean, you can do it just on one side, but if you prefer to feel more even and you started with the legs crossed, you could very slowly shift the legs so that the cross of the legs changes without lifting your head or disturbing the position of your torso. For the next couple of minutes, you can choose what would be your anchor in this position. You might want to focus on the support that you receive from underneath you and on all the meeting points between the ground or those props and your body. You could be scanning your body so that you notice all those little changes and shifts that happen from moment to moment. Or you could follow your breath, your natural breath. But you want to have an anchor that keeps you in the here and now. Somewhere your attention can keep returning to. You might notice that your body feels quite different from that first moment when you enter this position, and also your breath might be flowing differently. And in a couple of breaths, we'll be slowly starting to move out of this position. So you can mentally start preparing for that shift and maybe invite a couple of deeper breaths so that you're ready for the movement. And that coming out of the pose will be very gradual and might look slightly different depending on what position of the legs you have chosen. So if you were with your legs crossed or with the feet together and the knees apart, you might use your own hands to help you to bring your legs together and place the feet on the ground. If the feet are on the ground already, you can stay there for a little bit longer. And if you have your legs long, you can slowly bend one leg at a time. So just for a moment, you're going to stay still with the torso in the same position, but with the feet on the ground. Maybe there are some props that need to slightly move away, out of the way. And in order to come out, we're going to first roll to the side and stay there, so kind of rolling off the support and stay there for a couple of breaths. And then only after that, after a couple of breaths on the side, you can support yourself with the hand and slowly come up to a upright position. And then you can actually use exactly the same structure that you've already built, just adapt it a little bit to come to the next position when this time you will be facing that inclined support in front of you, and it might be that it would have to be um, higher up, and it might need a little bit more of support in here. And you will be with your legs apart, but not apart to the maximum. They can be slightly apart. You might also choose, actually, it's up to you whether you prefer to choose the version when you have your um, legs wider apart, and then you fill up the gap between your torso and whatever is underneath you. Maybe even use the support of your hands, of your elbows. And you can also use the support underneath your knees, each of the knees, to take away any pull, strong pull from the back of the legs. You could also place a cushion, for example, just behind your seat bones, so it rotates your pelvis forward and makes it more comfortable. If you prefer to be with your legs together, that's another option. You could, for example, place a bolster or whatever you're using underneath your knees. And then the same, something behind your seat bones, maybe something between your belly and the thighs so that your torso is not hanging in the air, and some sort of support um, for your forehead. For example, your hands or something else. So you can, as usual, use your props in a quite innovative way and decide which of the two positions is going to work for you better today. Take your time with getting all the props set up. Um, Sometimes it does take time to find that ideal position when you're sure you're not stretching anything, where you're not trying to reach anywhere, where you kind of have to brace yourself because your body is hanging in space and doesn't have enough support. So you really want to fill up all the gaps between your torso and whatever is going to support you from underneath you, so that you know you can give all of the weight of your torso into whatever is in front of you. And then you decide what you would like to do with the head as well, how you want to prop it so it's not going to cause any discomfort for your neck. So if you're not sure whether you have enough of the props to support you, then maybe try slightly different position, or maybe you need a bit more of a bend at the knees, something that is going to make it easier for you to release into it. So remember, this is not a yin yoga where you're just on the edge and it's kind of uncomfortable, but doable. In a restorative yoga, it's supposed to be fully comfortable. So if you feel like there's still some part of the body that is kind of tensing up and bracing against um, that position because it doesn't feel 100% comfy and safe, then think how you could adjust your props. You don't want even a trace of discomfort here. Yes. It might be, of course, a sense of opening, finding some space along the, whether it's back of the legs or inside of the legs or along the back line of the body, but nothing beyond that. And of course, like with any other position, it might happen that what you're feeling in that first moment is going to change pretty soon. And that could go in either direction. It could become more comfortable or less comfortable. So remember to keep constantly asking yourself, is this the most comfortable position I can take right now? And what can I do to make myself more comfortable? The answer might even include changing the position altogether, coming out of it, taking a break, doing something more active. All of that is perfectly fine. Notice how just being in a different position changes where your breath flows, where it reaches, what it expands when each inhale. Keep scanning the body for any areas that might be still on, active, resisting, bracing, holding, gripping. And ask them kindly if they could let go just for those few minutes. A little bit more on each exhale. Notice how it is for you to be in stillness and in silence. What it does to you. Just as before, you can mentally prepare yourself for the fact that you will be moving again soon. And you might prepare your body for that by taking a couple of deeper or louder breaths. Remember that journey out of the pose is very gradual. There's no rush. So regardless of whether you have your legs apart or together, the first thing you could do is to place your hands on the ground and then very slowly start walking your hands towards your hips and at the same time moving your torso more and more towards the vertical position until you're going to sit up. Then you might want to remove whatever was underneath your knees. Maybe you want to lean back for a moment. Notice how it is to be in that opposite tilt of the pelvis. And perhaps you want to just stay for a moment in stillness in that different position, or maybe your body really craves for some movement, and then you might include the movement, for example, by rolling gently your legs in and out, or hitting them against the floor. Okay, and we're going to move back to lying down position, and again, you will need some props for that, but it's going to be a slow, gradual journey. So you can make your way down to lying directly on the floor. Actually, it's the first time that you're lying directly on the floor today. And notice how it is, that contact with the floor, the direct contact with the floor of your entire back body. And you might begin with a little bit of a movement, anything that the body asks for, a little bit of rocking, massaging, really small movement that helps you adjust a little bit. And eventually land in a constructive rest. And again, you can settle here for a moment to get the feeling whether you're allowing your whole back body to yield to the floor, your head, your shoulder blades, your pelvis. And then we're going to start a slow journey into the next position, which will be a supported bridge. So basically what you will need would be either a block, but sometimes the block feels just too hard, also depends on what it's made of, or a firm cushion, or a block with blanket over it so it doesn't feel so hard. So those are the options. And I would stay with something relatively low, not to lift the pelvis too much. So you can have it somewhere that is going to be easy for you to reach for with one of your hands. And then first you can place your heels underneath the knees so that it's easier for you to shift the weight. And then very, very gradually start giving the weight more and more to the feet and less, which means less and less to the back of the pelvis and to the sacrum. So the more of the weight you give through the feet, the lighter your pelvis will feel on the ground. To the point where eventually first your tail and then the sacrum and then also even the part of the lower back will start floating off the ground. But see if you can keep the pelvis and the buttocks relaxed throughout. And eventually it will be high enough so that it will be easy for you to slide whatever you've chosen to support your sacrum, to slide it underneath. And then you can really rest that sacrum exactly on it. So you're not somewhere at the edge of your buttocks, you don't have that support at the edge of the buttocks, you don't have it right at the curve of the lower back. You want to have the most of the weight resting exactly, most of the weight of the sacrum resting exactly on that firm support underneath. So it gives you just a little bit of hollowing in the front of the body, so in the front of the thighs and in the groin. A tiny bit of an inversion, so again, it's going to feel slightly different for you to breathe when the diaphragm has to work against the gravity. You could choose the version when you slide one leg away, and that's going to create much more of that opening in front of the groin, but only under the condition that you feel fully supported and there's absolutely no discomfort for your lower back in this position. So potentially that might feel more relaxing for you, and then you can choose that one leg long, otherwise both legs bent. And finding the position where you don't feel that you're turning on any muscles in those legs. They're staying there just because of the construction of the body. You could also play a little bit with where you want to place your arms. It's gonna feel different if the arms are more out to the side. And it's definitely gonna feel more like that opening along the sides of the torso, sides of the rib cage, if you move the arms overhead. But again, under the condition that feels very relaxing, comfortable for your arms, the elbows bent, the whole weight of the arms heavily on the ground. So those are all things you can play with. And once you settle for one position, again, you can find a comfortable stillness. Of course, under the condition that stillness is comfortable for you. You can always stay with micro movements if it doesn't feel comfortable. And just like before, you can check and ask yourself, are there any parts of the body that are still turned on, that are still doing something? And that might be your legs, very likely, maybe the thighs or the buttocks, the pelvic floor or the belly. It could be your jaws or any other facial muscle. And if you identify an area like that, invite that place to soften, become heavier, and receive the support that it has. And be ready for the possibility this part might not respond as yet. So you cannot force the release. It comes so long as you feel comfortable and safe. Choose your anchor. whether it's going to be the flow of your breath, the natural flow of the breath, that rhythmic expansion and retraction. Or maybe you prefer to keep scanning the body, searching for any changes, any little, even more subtle shifts that happen from moment to moment. Or maybe you want to focus on that sensation of yielding, on that support you receive from underneath you. Whatever it is, you stay here and now. And inevitably, the mind will start wandering. You can keep bringing it back to your chosen anchor. If you have chosen a version with one leg long, you can very, very gradually and very, very slowly start the process of shifting, and that would involve bringing your heel towards the pelvis until you can step your foot on the ground. And only once that foot is firmly on the ground, very slowly start sliding the other heel away. And it might be that that other side might not be as comfortable. And in this case, it's fine if you don't do exactly the same thing on both sides. If you had your knees bent, stay where you are, so long as it's still comfortable. So there's always the option to move, to shift, to change the props, to come back with the pelvis to the ground. It's your practice. Sometimes the process of letting go can be aided by uh, sighing or even the physiological sigh, that double inhale with loud exhale. So if you know that works for you, you can always include that. A couple of side breaths. And then you can first mentally prepare yourself for the fact that you will start moving in a couple of breaths. Maybe shifting the breathing. And then, depending on what position you're in, if you had one leg long, again, you can slowly slide the heel towards you and then step the foot on the ground. If you had your arms out or overhead, you might bring them closer towards your body, one by your side. And then we'll be coming out of this position very, very slowly. So first you can again make sure that you have your heels roughly underneath your knees. And we'll do the same thing as when we're coming into this pose. So giving more weight to the feet, more and more weight to the feet. And the more weight is on the feet, the less weight is at the under the sacrum. So eventually your sacrum will be almost hovering or barely touching whatever was underneath it, and that will make it easy for you to slide it from underneath you. But make sure that you don't plonk straight to the ground. So your pelvis is now hanging like a hammock for a moment in the air. And you can use each of your exhalation to lower just one vertebra at a time. On exhalation, lower one vertebra, and on the next exhalation, another one. And like that, keep going down one vertebra at a time so that you lower your entire lower back first. And then once your sacrum touches the ground, that's when the natural curve in the lower back returns. And you can give yourself a moment here to feel the rebound, to feel all those sensations that you might be feeling now around the sacrum. There might be some warmth, there might be some pins and needles, some pulsation, vibration, whatever it is for you. You can stay with it for a moment until it recedes slightly. And then again, you might choose to stay in stillness if that's what the body is asking for. Or maybe you want to introduce a little bit of movement. And that might be rocking your pelvis from side to side. It might be bringing it in towards the chest and giving yourself a hug. It might be massaging all the edges of the sacrum by making some little circles with the knees in the air. So whatever it is for you, go ahead. Do what feels most soothing, what the body is really craving for. And then you can land with your feet on the ground again if you were moving. And prepare a couple of props on one side of your pelvis. It might be cushions, it might be the blanket. You will see what will work best for you. And here again, actually, there are a few things we can do. what you can do exactly. You might want to lift your feet and then lower the legs. You might want to keep the feet on the ground and let the knees drop to the side. You might even want to drop them in more like windshield wipers with one externally rotated and one internally rotated. So again, it's really up to you how you want to do that. But the main point here is that you want to have that leg which is on top. You want to have it fully supported, so you don't want it to be hanging in the air. So if there's any gap in between of the legs, you can fill it up, for example, with a blanket. And if the you can also support that leg from the bottom leg from underneath as much as it wants to be, upper leg, lower leg. Sometimes it's nice to have, if you have it, something heavy on top of the hip um, to uh, make it kind of more grounded. Um, so if there is gap between the legs and you feel that yeah, it just doesn't feel very supportive for that leg that is on top. It's kind of hanging in space. Then just check what you can do to change it. The shoulder blades stay firmly and comfortably on the ground, and your head might want to turn on its own, but if it doesn't want to turn, it can stay exactly where it is. And again, you could have the arms in various positions, maybe more out to the side, but not necessarily. So whatever you've chosen, just check that you really don't have that top leg uh, in a position that makes you feel like you really need to hold it there, that it is being held or supported. And of course, depending on where exactly your knees are, how much close towards the torso they are, um, or in what relation they are to one another, it's going to change the sensation. And you might be feeling them in slightly different sections of your back. So you can play with it for a moment and find a place that feels the most comfortable for now. Sometimes it really feels, it even feels soothing just to have one hand on top of that top leg, resting there, or even somewhere over the belly or over your rib cage. So sometimes the self-touch adds another layer of that um, message of self-soothing message of safety. And just like before, you could keep checking. Is it still that most comfortable position I can take? Maybe there's something different that my body prefers. And don't be afraid to change it. Like you really don't need to be still. It's fine to shift to something that is going to feel more relaxing. And searching for any strong sensations. This has to be a place where you're so comfortable that you could easily fall asleep. And again, you could feel that the breath reaches more easily one side of the rib cage than the other, just because of your body shape right now. And a sign of gripping, tension, numbness. That's a definite sign that you should make some adjustments. So just a few breaths in this position, and then you can very slowly start the process of moving back to the center. Maybe that requires removing some props, slowly bringing the legs back to the vertical position, and stay for a while in the constructive rest. It might be interesting for you to feel the difference between right and left side of the body right now. Those sensations coming mostly on one side, felt mostly on one side. And then you could prepare the props on the other side, but without the expectation that it's going to be exactly the same. So it doesn't even matter whether your legs are exactly in the same position as you did on the other side. Maybe on one side they were together, on the other side they were more in that windshield wipers position. Just check what works and where you can truly let the weight of that top leg drop and have it supported from underneath. Both of the legs supported from underneath. You can play with how many props you use, with the position of the legs in relation to your torso and in relation to one another. Eventually finding a place where they can drop in a very comfortable way. You might also choose where your head really wants to rest. Maybe rolling the head from side to side and letting it drop wherever it feels most comfortable. Eventually, find your place of stillness. And as this is the position that you do both on the right and the left side, you might get curious about the differences there might be between the right and the left side. And can you stay curious about it without adding judgment? Pure curiosity. Noticing, observing the difference, but without adding any interpretation or judgment. Can even say, oh, that's interesting. But of course, stay with your anchor, whether it's breath, the sensation of yielding, or that constant scanning for any places that might be turned on, still active. Exhalation. Your chance to release, let go, sink deeper, yield more, soften. Your last few breaths in stillness. Eventually, you can again start moving very gradually, very slowly. Maybe that includes removing some of the props so that it's easier for you to bring your legs back to the position with the knees pointing up to the constructive rest. And give yourself a moment just feeling the sensations in the pelvis, along the torso, both sides of the rib cage, maybe legs, inner or outer, any other part of the body that might still give you some rebound. And notice how your body rests on the ground, all the meeting points between the body and the floor, your feet, the back of the pelvis with the sacrum, the back of the rib cage, your shoulder blades, your arms, and back of the head. Keep yielding. And then again, if there's any need to start making some movements, bigger or smaller, whether it's going to be windshield wipers or something more gentle, or maybe stretching and yawning, or maybe bringing the knees in again and moving them in space, or letting your limbs float up towards the ceiling, or whatever else you might need, go for it. Whatever the body is still asking for, there's no right or wrong here. And all that eventually is going to lead you to roll to a fetal care, lying there for a couple of breaths more, lying down in the fetal. Unless it has been a very static session with a long time spent directly on the ground, And take at least 4 or 5 breaths when you are in the in that fetal care. And then eventually you might support yourself with the hands to make your way up to any comfortable sitting position. So you could choose any of the props that you were using before to sit higher up and comfortably. Start making some little movements. Maybe rotate the pelvis, move in space so that you can give the weight down through your sit bones to the air. Find the lightest place for your head at the end of the spine. Find yourself in that upright position and in a new relation to gravity and to space around you. So now you have the space in front of you, on your sides, behind you, and above you, and the support is from underneath. So become aware of the room that you're in, and of the space you're taking in this room. And when you're ready, you can wait until your inhalation will let your arms float effortlessly out and up. And then on exhalation, you can slowly lower the hands in front of you. And you can repeat that. Eventually, letting your hands land wherever they want to land, whether it's going to be the lower belly, the heart center, maybe staying on the thighs. Stay for a moment longer, still with the attention, part of your attention turn inwards, feeling that sense of contact with the ground, the support, your breath. But also part of the attention already turned outwards, being aware of the space around you. And you can even open your eyes and add that peripheral gaze, taking in everything that is around you, so that you connect those two perspectives, the inward gaze, but also the connection with everything that surrounds you. And thank yourself for this practice.